2026 marks the fifth Tech Trends report published by Hum and Silverchair. Each report opens with insights from one of our leaders about the trends we're seeing, and in honor of our fifth year, we thought we'd pull back the curtain and hear from the wizards behind the report. I'm Laura Simis from Hum. I'm joined by Sam Green and Stephanie Lovegrove Hansen of Silverchair. And we'll just kick it off with our first question. When we published our first report in 2022, AI was barely a footnote. By 2024, it dominated every conversation. How has the conversation and related predictions about AI changed in each report?
I think that for me, one of the things that I've seen as an interesting shift is talking about AI as a tool to talking about AI as a broader environment. I think there's still a lot of questions about how it should be used and how we should apply it and things like that. But ultimately, I'm excited to see in 2026 and beyond that we've started to move from experimenting with AI to applying it and creating kind of the world that we'd like to build. And I am really excited to see the conversation get a little bit more existential and talk about kind of the evolution of scholarly communication's purpose, and what it means to discover, to validate, and to share knowledge in an AI mediated world. What about you guys?
That's smart. I agree. I think it's been so exciting to see how the conversation around like use cases for AI has expanded over the last 2 years. I think in 2024, we were hearing people talk a lot about like the small bets and experimenting with individual tools and sort of, everybody's trying to look at what everybody else is doing. I think in 2026, we're seeing publishers that are actually building sustainable applications and being really considerate about using AI, sometimes completely rebuilding a workflow around AI rather than just like tacking it on. And I think that maturity is exciting to see. It means we didn't just get stuck in the peak of inflated expectations on the hype cycle. We're seeing kind of the experiments and programs really be used to deliver ROI.
Yeah, completely agree with everything you both have said. It definitely seems like it moved from whether to how. So how do we employ this in a way that still preserves the integrity of the work that we do as an industry? And how do we make sure that it's improving researchers' lives and making things better for those that are working in scholarly publishing? So it's been exciting to see. I think it makes for some more interesting answers. So some challenges that seemed insurmountable subsequently fell off of future reports altogether, whereas other topics have risen in significance. So what does this rapid adaptation tell us about our industry's ability to handle disruption? And what should publishers take from this as they face the next big challenge? Laura?
I think this says something really exciting about the industry and kind of encouraging. Like, we don't necessarily love the disruption, but we're getting good at metabolizing it. I think the themes that we've seen come to the top and kind of come back around year after year are tied to those deeper core values of publishing, like research integrity and trust, and sort of how the disruptions influence those things. The key for publishers, I think, especially as that disruption starts to feel like it's happening even faster than ever before, is building systems that are resilient and adaptable and not trying to construct like the perfect system optimized for one specific future. It's like focusing on building the infrastructure that lets you move fast and experiment and iterate quickly as the ecosystem continues to shift. Because I think the next big disruption probably isn't the one we're talking about right now.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I think my takeaway is that sometimes slow and steady does win the race, that our industry has a reputation for being slow moving, which can be a challenge for innovation, but it also means that we don't get carried away with fads and short-term challenges. So I think that the healthy debate that exists within our industry means that there's always voices that are pulling us forward, while making sure that we also have voices that are kind of steadying the ship.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with what you've both said. I think that we've gotten better at kind of weathering technologically based disruptions. I think we take a lot of care as an industry in what we're building and why we're building it. And I think one of the things that will help us to weather future transformations and future disruptions is really that the people have remained a constant, whether that's the need for sort of trust and community from kind of researchers. The humans at the core of this industry, I think, remain that kind of calm in a sea of disruption. And I kind of hope that they continue to act as a guide for how we shape the future as we move on to whatever's next, whatever comes next. Our next question is about data. So data is the one thing that's been critically important in every single report. It never got less important, just a little bit more sophisticated. So why has data been the constant in a period of such dramatic change? And are publishers actually acting on this, or are we still talking about it more than doing it?
I think this just shows how much data underpins all of the other trends. As everything gets more complex and we have more content and more channels and, all of these trends that are going to change year to year, the infrastructure of data is going to be more central and important. And I think we're at a time where we're really going to see a discrepancy between the publishers that have taken their data seriously for the last few years and those that haven't, because all of the things in this year's report and everything that everyone's talking about with AI, using AI to support editors and peer reviewers and deploying AI agents, all of that depends on having data structured correctly and the ability to actually act on it. You can't deliver a personalized author experience if you don't know who your authors are. You can't triage submissions with AI if your metadata is absolute chaos. If you're just tacking AI onto your systems without data, you're just doing very expensive guessing. So I think that like this year, we're going to see AI-ready data be a competitive differentiator. We're going to see publishers really rise to the top on the fact that they've been investing in data infrastructure for years, and now they can implement and test AI more effectively because they have the clean, structured data to do it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that 100%. I also think that data is such a broad term, and I think it continues to become a bigger umbrella term for new things and new things to measure, new things to pay attention to. I still think that, in addition to sort of needing that really comprehensive infrastructure around your data, I still think that we sometimes struggle or are a little bit inconsistent in how we use that data. I think it's almost like a ritual to collect your data and to gather data, but then what you do with it and how you make meaning out of that data, I think is still a little bit piecemeal in some places. So I'm curious to see, especially as you were saying, with AI content discovery and things like that, data becomes even more important. I'm curious to see how we make use of that data on the other end.
Yeah, completely agree. And it is interesting to see how it's changed for publishers. I think we ultimately trade in information, which is captured in data. So data has always been really important. But I think that the type of data has changed, who's consuming the data has changed. We don't just want the research, we want the clean metadata. We want to know how users are accessing it so we can serve them better. But and now all that also has to be accessible to AI agents. But it's interesting, I think we still have a long way to go. I think, though, people understand how important it is now. So in that way, we've made a lot of progress. And I also think I'll be interested to see, you talk about gathering data and stuff like that, how we can use AI to gather the data for us so that we're not as maybe connected to these really strict formats and kind of things. Maybe it can help us kind of break open the data by removing some of those format restrictions. So that'll be interesting to see. And speaking of interesting to see, prediction time, we've watched AI go from 0 to 60. We've seen OA transform from a threat to an opportunity, and we've witnessed research integrity become existential. So as we prepare for the fifth report, what's the question that you are most eager to ask publishers? What trend do you think we're underestimating right now that will be obvious next year?
Ooh, okay. So I think that in terms of the trend that we're underestimating, I think maybe the world in general is really headed for a very kind of scary authentication crisis. And I think that the publishing industry is kind of uniquely positioned to play a part in counteracting that. We see it all the time. We don't necessarily know whether text or data is AI generated. Did humans play a role in this? Is the data even real? I think that it's going to become harder and harder to just authenticate information across the broader internet. And the value of the information that we publish in scholarly communications is going to be even more important. So how can we ensure that it is discovered, that the authentication pathways are clear and things like that. I think it's going to be a world where reality becomes something that we have to double check, and I'm interested to see how that plays out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think my trend is maybe like kind of existential also. It's like when I think about things, and I don't know if this will happen in the next year, but maybe in 10 to 20 years, I feel like there's something about the nature of work that I think between the shift to remote as the dominant format and the many ways that AI is transforming the workforce or is going to transform the workforce, I think we might look back and be shocked that we weren't doing more as an industry and as a species to actively shape the way that work looks for people. So I'm kind of curious to see if that starts to come up as a trend in future reports. I'm picturing the therapists of the future talking with people who feel disconnected because they're not building networks through their jobs as the way they once did, or people who feel purposeless because their work is being done by AI agents and they don't feel connected to it. And that therapists themselves might be a chatbot. So this is kind of all something that I'm thinking about as a future trend.
Exactly. No, I think, we talk a lot about AI. I'm excited to sort of see things shift a little bit more towards like with AI, like what does that mean for human time and community building? And, as you've introduced AI and automation to your workflows, how are you reinvesting that human time? I think, like you just said, there's this great fear that kind of AI is going to make us all lazier and dumber and less engaged with the work. But on the optimistic end, and I think where the opportunity lies, there's so much potential to like accelerate discovery and fundamentally shift how the human part of your workforce is spending their time. We talk about it a lot at Hum with Alchemist Review that the goal is not to replace human editors, it's to free them from very mechanical work and help them triage a massive amount of papers a little bit faster and be able to understand what a paper is about and decide what journal it belongs in a little bit faster and really give humans time to do deeper, more expert, like relationship driven work. So I'm hoping 2026 is a year that we start to hear more about that. Where are people saving hours and what kind of things can they invest their time in now that they're not spending it doing the busy work? I hope we get to see publishers talk more about the meaningful ways that that's happening. And I think across the board, companies that are leveraging AI as a means to unlock the most valuable part of their workforce that's going to come out ahead of the companies that are just thinking of it as a way to like do the same amount of work with less people.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm super curious to see what happens when we feel we're efficient enough. When we've optimized, what comes next? Well, I'm very excited about the contents of this report, both the contributions as well as the predictions that many have provided. And I think we're all also excited to hear your predictions. So be sure to share them with us after you've read the 2026 Tech Trends Report. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.